Hello everyone, I'm Brawl Mithra. Today I'm going to talk about Kingdom Death Monster and the rules of Kingdom Death Monster. This is the rulebook for Kingdom Death Monster. This is a 1.6 rulebook. It's very big. There are a lot of interactions and a lot of small little timings that happen on all the cards and everything in Kingdom Death Monster. It is not the... It's easy to grasp once you know how to play. And there's always I get a lot of questions asking can you do a how to play Kingdom Death and stuff. I want to do more so of a focus on rules that can be easily missed or common questions that are always asked. But I don't want to do so much. I don't want to do a whole list because recently the community has been joined by Dark Tastemaker, which is one of the members of Team Death. They have joined the Lanterns Reign Discord. They take rules, clarifications, and things, and every week or so they collect all these rules from the community, and then they clarify a lot of commonly ambiguous things. A lot of it have to do with timing. And with the timing of the game, because it's a boss battler, and the cards are very well laid out, the rulebook is very well laid out, and everything, there's these flows on cards and everything. Everything has a specific timing, and a lot of the clarifications happen around these timing things. At what point does this happen? At what point does this happen? How does this interact with this, and when? Things like that. Or when this threshold's met, how do you treat this? So those are the types of things that Taste gets asked quite a bit, and very graciously, which Tastemaker is absolutely amazing, and it's so great to finally have this type of community interaction with Kingdom Death. They've been updating the Living Glossary. The Living Glossary has been around for a very long time. It just doesn't get updated very often, but it has been recently. It's been getting updated quite often, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks or so, with great community questions. So I'm going to spend some time and talk about the Living Glossary and how questions are made and just the FAQ. So with Kingdom Death, I highly recommend. There are great pages to just go and reread for the actual rulebook itself. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to recommend some pages that a lot of issues commonly come up for. So for new players and stuff, pages 38 and 39 are great references in the rulebook. I'll have them up here, 38, 39. Mostly the Lantern 10 things and for milestones and things like that. 78 and 79 of 1.6, so that's probably the same in 1.5 and stuff. It's the page about survival. The 78, all survival actions, survival opportunities, survivor turn, survival action limitations during monster flows. These two pages, I would say 97% of a lot of the questions, because I spend a lot of time in Kingdom Death community doing rules. Whenever I'm sitting at the computer editing or something and I see rules come up in the rules channel, I'll always try to answer rules questions. So these are the ones I noticed very commonly. Those 4 pages that I mentioned will answer a lot of it. Again, it's because of the timing ambiguity of the rules. And if you can get down, it's just familiarizing yourself with how the timing works on 78 and 79, mainly for survival action, stuff like that. It'll answer a bunch of questions. So let's go look at the Living Glossary now, and I'm going to explain how Taste has been doing this whole amazing thing and all these new clarifications. So this is just one of the channels in Lanterns Reign Discord here, quickly that I'm going to show. This is where the questions get asked. Again, you can always go to Lanterns Reign. It's a public Discord. Lanterns Reign is one of the larger Kingdom Death communities, and you can go to rules, and then in the rules channel, there'll be different threads for every week or so, or ever next round of questioning, whenever that is, whether it's a week apart, 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks apart. But so this is one of the older threads, as you can see here, because these are the ones that have already been answered, so I'm just going to show. And then anybody can ask questions anywhere they want. As you can see as I scroll through this, there's all kinds of people asking questions. So this is one of the ones I asked here, the Lonely Tree expansion, and then I gave citations and stuff. We'll go down. Here's Cartosis X. You can see here. This was, more Cartosis X. Let's go down. Where are the other ones? clarification on the watcher page, something I asked about, 6+ result of the heart flute, heat wave, fine fluid. So as you can see, all these things are things that were asked. And here is from my Discord. My Discord links are on the YouTube banner and everything. They're in the description sometimes as well in videos. But this is from my Discord where I have gone and collected everything. So just so you can see here, I'm just going to read this off. This channel is a collection of all the rules clarifications made by Team Death. These are done by Dark Tastemaker on the Lanterns Reign Discord. Dark Tastemaker is a member of Team Death at Kingdom Death and runs these rules questions by other members of the team before answering. As you can see here, this is the tasting notes where he says this. Then you have all the questions that have been asked. So you see the Black Lichen Strange Resource. These have been asked by multiple people, but there has been a lot of them asked. So as I scroll down, these are, as I've collected them, the bold is the question, and then the answer. As you can see, as I scroll through all of these are all the different things. This is the, I don't know where else you can get a collection. Lanterns Reign does not currently have a collection like this on their thing. They're nowhere on the Discord does it have anywhere where this is collected. So I did it on mine. It's the best place to look right now that I know of. If someone else, if Lanterns Reign had a way to post this, I would. But there we go. Those are all the questions. So now let's look at the actual FAQ. This is the main website. Will appear now. That is the main Kingdom Death website. It's highly recommended. Everybody should just go there. It's a really good website. So with this main glossary, this is just like the glossary in the back of the book, only sometimes this gets updated. You can see 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a lot of it was updated when 1.5 came out, but it has been since been continually getting updated. I think it was just updated for, let's look. So the way I did it was Control F and I did day. So as you can see here, a very common question that has been around for a long time. How do reroll tokens work and how do rerolls work? So you can see this was updated 10 days ago based on questions that were asked of Dark Tastemaker. So some effects allow survivors to re-roll a die result. They must spend the token or mark off their lifetime reroll box and re-roll a single die from an action. The new result must be kept. Survivors may only use their reroll when they are affected by an action with a die roll. Again, this is we'll talk about it. But so this is what the glossary does. Again, you can search for anything on here. You can just type right in and search for any of these things that you think you need clarification for. Now, the glossary is not perfect. It's a great utility tool, in my opinion. It is absolutely amazing. However, it is not always 100% like accurate. It's a glossary. Glossaries are like truncated results, very specific to the thing. So when you ask like a question, the reason why it is accurate, right? It's accurate to the definition of the term, not always accurate to being put in practice, right? So sometimes you might ask like, how does this work? And then someone will post the glossary, but it doesn't really like answer the question of what you were asking, right? So there are a lot of context is left off the glossary because that's not the point of the glossary. The point of a glossary is to just define a word in a truncated fashion for you, so you can define it like quickly when you're using it in the rules. It doesn't explain the rules to you. What does explain the rules, which is found on the same exact site, is the FAQ section, which is now, those questions are now being pulled from the Discords. Here are all kinds of things where all these questions are being answered. You can see here, this is a great utility for if you have a rules question, and you can just type search in here and it will quickly find something. So as I was just explaining one of my other things, let's go to age. We're just going to type age, and then we're going to need to go a little bit more. We'll go with we'll go rewards. No, aftermath. How about that? Here it is. This question. When a survivor has the ability to gain monster-level weapon proficiency after a nemesis fight, such as axe proficiency for the Butcher, do they need to be eligible? Have wounded a monster at least once with the weapon type to gain proficiency. Then you can click it. It says yes. A survivor must still be eligible to gain weapon-specific weapon proficiency from the aftermath of a nemesis fight. Right? So, great. This says, so when you make the switch, you could gain it right away if they defined eligibility. So, let's go down here. This is the one I was going to try to pull up when I did the age question. When does a survivor earn their first rank of weapon proficiency? When a survivor triggers age 1, they nominate a weapon proficiency type immediately, whenever and wherever it happens. In order to gain their first rank of weapon proficiency during the aftermath, they must have wounded the monster with the declared type at least once. Some scenarios have survivors declare a weapon proficiency type during the aftermath. In those cases, you are still only eligible to gain ranks of weapon proficiency if you wounded with the newly declared weapon type. So, this is a perfect example of how this question, though technically correct, says yes. It answered this question, and then it says the survivor must still be eligible to gain weapon proficiency from the aftermath of a nemesis fight. Well, then looking at weapon proficiency, you might have to go a little bit deeper to find your actual answer here, because it's a complex question that was asked. So this is why the types of questions that get asked is really important, and the types of the way you phrase it and what you're specifically asking is important. And if context is left out, you might have to go looking for it elsewhere, or it might not completely answer the question. However, with the Living Glossary, with all these things being answered all the time, and with all of our collecting all these answers, having actual access to Dark Tastemaker right away, getting all kinds of stuff answered with full context, and then it's added to the glossary. That's what makes it amazing. So let's just look at all the types of stuff that is actually just on the glossary. So I'm going to go ahead and delete out our search. Let's just look at all the stuff that's been asked recently. So when a random event/effect just told me to draw a specific resource that we've already drawn all copies of, what do? You can click on it right here. This is a question that gets brought up quite a bit. Resource desk refreshed at the end of and tells you exactly how to do this. Are after damage effects applied for each hit that deals damage or once per attack? Again, this is like for Bleed for the Butcher. This is a very common question. After damage effects are resolved once at the end of the attack, regardless of how many times the attack dealt damage. As long as it dealt damage at least once, after damage is going to trigger. So many amazing questions are asked here. Again, Survivor's Born with Cloth. Any timing restrictions on the trigger and run away? Now, here's an example of this one, context here. So this is a question I asked, so I know the full context of it, which hopefully, what I'm going to try to do is I really wanted to just maybe as time goes on, maybe I'll go back, we'll get Taste to look at some more of these answers again and get them more fleshed out. Because are the Vault Key earrings intended to work with a survivor with the Fear of the Dark disorder? It says yes. Now, in context, the question was actually, this was the question, are Vault Key earrings intended to work with a survivor with the Fear of the Dark disorder? But there was more to it. It was asking, because they're retired, you can never depart with them because they're retired, right? Because Fear of the Dark retires them. You can't depart with a retired survivor. This was clarified even further. So sometimes this just says yes. So it can be problematic, like here with this one with binge eating. Binge eating was another one that I asked about. This is unfortunate one, the way I phrased this again, because I said a survivor with binge eating disorder must always be nominated to consume whenever a story event offers the choice. Does this mean the settlement is prevented from cooking? That was poor wording on my behalf. I should not have said it like, does this mean the settlement is prevented from cooking? That was not my intended thing. Survivor will always eat the dish. That's what I meant by prevented from cooking, meaning that if there's a binge eater in the settlement and the settlement cooks, you can never nominate anybody. It's always going to be that binge eater. So you're prevented from cooking. You're prevented from selecting someone to eat the dish because the binge eater is always going to do it. And here's the answer. The settlement is not prevented from cooking. Again, that's my poor phrasing. I wish I would have done that. However, a binge-eating survivor will always be nominated to consume if they are able to. As such, should a settlement cook a recipe from the cooking story event, while there is a survivor with binge eating in the settlement, they will always eat the dish. If there are multiple binge eaters and any dish created during, or if there are multiple binge eaters, any dish created in cooking will be eaten by one of the binge eaters. See, so that's how binge eating actually works. There's lots of binge eating stuff was asked. Let's look for another binge eating. I know there's another one right here. Is the survivor with the binge eating disorder forced to consume all consumable resources as they gain them? No. The binge eating disorder was intended to interact with the survivor being in possession of consumable resources. Was not intended. If a hunt, story, or settlement event presents a situation where the survivor may consume, they must if they have the binge eating disorder. So with this question, this is what was originally on the FAQ, and that's what led me to ask the question that I asked about this one. Because the way the binge eating disorder is worded is it makes it sound like as you gain consumables, you need to eat them. That's why this question was always asked. So the card is really hard to decipher the way it's written. I wish it would have been updated in the card pack, because this answer here, this is like 2 or 3 years old. This is a very old answer. This has always been here. But so this made it so, when you think about it, it's like, oh, okay, so you're not supposed to eat the vermin right away. And that's the way the community treated it for a long time because of this answer. But, however, when you actually think about it and you're like, oh, it says whenever a story or settlement event presents a situation where survivor may consume, that's what made me think about cooking, because that just destroys cooking. You're always going to have one, as long as it's like, if you're a binge eater, you might as well kill them at sacrifice, because if you want to cook, you're going to have to get rid of them. So it's stuff like this where even though the FAQ asks question or that answers questions, sometimes it raises more questions or adds context. However, I still think Living Glossary is the best thing to happen in Kingdom Death for so long, with Tastemaker doing all this. Again, let's clear off binge, let's just go through this. There is so much here. Beast Knuckles, Bloom Sphere, bow and arrow. Can a hit location be critically wounded if there's no critical? Nope. This is actually one of the suggestions I made for reading. That's one of the pages. Can a knockdown survivor dodge? Yep. Can 2 dismembered arms use fist and tooth? Yes. Person with dismembered arm use paired weapons? All these questions. Someone hunt more than once? Nope. Can a survivor dodge the white lion's grab? Nope. Can a survivor regrow blind? Can a survivor tumble while knocked down? Yes. See, very awesome questions. Let's see if there's any. Well, there are some very good ones here. Can you craft more copies of gear than come in the core game? Of course. They're not limited. See, a lot of these questions, a very good resource. This is such a great resource for someone who's just learning how to play. It's, again, as I said in the intro, it's one of the reasons why I didn't want to just do like a how to play or commonly missed rules, because there's a lot of minutia. So can you explain automatic hits? Can you explain survival opportunities, hit locations, and surging? Look at this long answer. This is pages 78 79. What do you know? Can you explain the augury results? Can you please clarify the wording on Founding Stone? Can you use a melee weapon with reach to go through an obstacle? This is a very neat one. Can you use where is it? No, where? Can you use a melee weapon with reach? Yes. Field of view only applies to ranged weapons, not reach weapons. Very interesting stuff. Clawhead arrow. White Lion Coat Pounce ability, Dead Antelope. This one was actually... Oh no, this wasn't it. One of the ones is cleared up in the Living Glossary. I think it was removed. Let's see. Does ambushing the monster change the round structure? This is another common one. Nope. It just makes... it keeps it whatever it is. It just skips the first survivor's turn. Monster need to be adjacent. Survivor dying at the end of their attack. Does Survivor 2 level... all this stuff is so amazing. Frenzy prevent fighting arts from working. Yes. There's another one. Perfect. Let's go through. When does the settlement gain the benefits of the death principle of the first death? No. Another great one that's always asked. Let's see. Do monsters turn to face their target? Turning to face is part of the move action. So if the reaction doesn't tell them to turn to face, or tell them to perform a move in action, they don't turn. Neat. All this stuff is neat. Where's some other ones? Resolving hunt, and here's one. Another one that's always asked. End of the turn versus end of turn effects. If a monster is instructed to end its turn, it ends its turn then and there, and skips any effect that triggers at the end of its turn. For example, when the Phoenix performs Disdain, it does not perform Zeal afterwards. great. All the stuff is absolutely amazing. Whereas some other ones, let's see, Path of Gloom, here's another one. How does Path of Gloom interact with effects like Husk of Destiny's Stark Raving, making you always insane? When direct contradictions arise between specific rules, such as Path of Gloom and Stark Raving / Husk of Destiny, rule against the survivor's favor. Again, that's going to be ambiguous, but hopefully a survivor who is always insane and not insane unless they have 5+ insanity is not insane unless they have 5+ insanity. Let's see. Here's another one. How does the Speaker Cult Knife interact with Acid Palms and Monster Claw style? Abilities like Acid Palms and Metal Maw and fighting arts like Monster Claw style affect all weapons and the Fist and Tooth type, including the Speaker, or are all weapons with the Fist and Tooth type, including Speaker Cult Knife. So amazing. This one here, how do the timing of after hit and dodge interact? After hits occur after determining hits from a monster's attack roll, before rolling hit location die. Dodging occurs after rolling hit location dice, before damage, as after hit effects trigger before survivors have the opportunity to dodge. Survivors cannot dodge to circumvent after hit effects. Huh. So this is an interesting one. We're going to talk about this one right here. And I'll show what I was talking about with the... Or there's one more I want to look at. So we're going to remember that one, and we're going to go to this one here. And this one right here. With weapon mastery, are all other survivors considered a weapon specialist of its type? And then it says yes. And it's yes, which is 100% correct. This answers that exact question. So if weapon mastery is granting all survivors the weapon specialization, they are all specialists. Yes, that is the answer. So we're going to talk about this one and one other one real quick. So here we are on my Discord. I have collected the entire conversations with Tastemaker, and I've pasted them here in my Discord the way that Tastemaker answered them on the Discord before they went on to the Living Glossary. So there's some that I just talked about. We're going to go back and we're going to look at the differences between the way Taste answered it and the way they made their way, or after they made their way to the Living Glossary, how they remained answered. So I know we talked about this one. Let's look at this one again. Under what circumstances can a survivor use lifetime rerolls, reroll tokens, or lifetime rerolls / reroll tokens? Can a roll result that has already been rerolled be rerolled again? So that was the question. And if you remember when I just showed it, the answer was actually just explaining how to use the rerolls. We'll look here. So survivors with a lifetime reroll token can spend it to reroll any single die result that they are present for. This includes any dice that the survivor rolls. Example, a D10 roll for the survivor, a D10 roll for the monster. So it's not just your dice. Monster controller, when they have the monster controller tile, or a hit location roll, etc. And any dice the survivor is deemed present for, according to the narrative consensus. Players are recommended to suggest that a survivor is present only when they have sufficient narrative clause to do so. After a roll result has been re-rolled, the new result must be kept and cannot be re-rolled. For those who are curious as to what the narrative consensus of Team Death is when it comes to re-rolls, our stance is generally all survivors are present during the settlement phase unless there is a narrative reason that is precluding them from participating for the rest of the settlement. Example, a survivor currently being secretive, that's a secretive disorder, will likely not be too interested in interacting with the rest of the settlement. 2. Survivors are only present for a hunt event if they are actively participating in it somehow. Example, when they are explicitly instructed to roll, when a survivor with a whip in their gear grid uses it to assist another survivor. Let's go down. 3. During the chaos and confusion of the showdown phase, survivors are only truly aware of their own actions and cannot be present for others unless there is a very good narrative justification. A survivor may be able to expend their lifetime reroll to help another survivor reroll for their purpose roll. As purposes of fighting art, all the bonds are is a fighting art all about the bonds of camaraderie. That is a huge, long, well-detailed explanation that unfortunately did not completely make it to the Living Glossary. However, Taste has said the Living Glossary is the end-all, be-all. In some cases, right? Some of the Living Glossary, Taste has answered, then changed it when other questions were asked. And then the Living Glossary was updated and changed. So is it the end-all be-all if you can change it after I ask for another clarification? Ugh. But things will change on there. With that said, let's look at the other questions and get them in their entirety. All right, here's another one that I brought up. How do the timings of after hit and dodge interact? That was the question. What made it to the glossary was a little bit different than that exact question, but let's go what he answered. After hit events, or after hit effects occur after determining hits from a monster's attack roll before rolling hit location dice. Dodge occurs after rolling hit location dice before damage, as after hit effects trigger before survivors have the opportunity to dodge. Survivors cannot use dodge to circumvent after hits. That is what made it to the glossary. Now, this question had additional clarifications that changed the answer significantly, right? Because I asked another follow-up question. This was the next follow-up question after reading that. Can you only dodge a hit if you roll hit location dice? Meaning that if there was another situation, well, I talk about here, can you dodge like any hit, right? That Gold Smoke Knight just hits you, but it might be a specific, or there's other places that don't tell you to roll a hit location, and they just hit a specific location. So you're not rolling a dice. Could you dodge those? Can you dodge the hit affected by the Telseric eye tack? That was my follow-up question to saying that you can't use, or was it, survivors cannot use dodge to circumvent a non-roll, right? So I followed up with this. And then the answer became, dodge's timing occurs after rolling hit location dice before damage and allows you to treat a hit as a failed attack roll. Effects that replace rolling hit location dice with another effect, such as Headhunter or the Telseric eye tack, do not remove the timing of after rolling hit location dice from the damage process. Dodge treats a hit, not a rolled hit location, as a failed attack roll. Dodge can occur against Headhunter and Telseric eye tack hits. Okay? Headhunter is an after hit effect. So the glossary says you can't dodge after hit effects. So all of this might be moot, but this is the type of thing that can still be clarified. Rules for abilities like Headhunter state that you do not roll hit location dice when that is triggered. This ability can be found in both after hit and before damage attack triggers. After hit triggers resolve before rolling hit location dice. However, before damage triggers are resolved after hits and hit location dice are rolled. How does this work? Right? So there's many AI cards that have Headhunter listed as after damage, meaning that you don't get to roll, but some of them have before hit, meaning that you wouldn't get to roll because it's before hit, where after damage it's just replacing your ability to roll. So Taste then said Headhunter should always be an after hit. Those that are listed as before damage are typographical errors, right? That's a lot of typos. There's a lot of them that are after hits. My third one was some AI cards have attack profiles that have no damage at all. They're just a hyphen listed as their damage. Should you still roll a hit location dice for these attacks? Can these things be dodged? Answer for that was, that has a trigger that essentially encompasses the lethality of the attack as compared to normal damage, meaning you don't roll for anything like that and it can't be dodged. That is specifically the gobble up attacks from Screaming Antelope. Is there a mechanical difference between ignoring and canceling a hit? There is a mechanical difference between ignoring a hit and canceling a hit. So, that was full context of can you dodge after hit. What made it to the Living Glossary was just the original one. So as it states now, what the Living Glossary says, until I'm able to talk to Taste again, Living Glossary says you cannot dodge after hits, and I don't know if all those, but it'd be very helpful to know if those things are still typographical errors, right? Is everything a typo for the before hits? Should those all be treated as after hits? Is it? Can you dodge the Screaming Antelope's gobble up? Can you dodge Telseric eye tack? See, there's stuff like that that requires a lot of clarification that the Living Glossary for some reason doesn't include, and then Taste does say that you just ignore anything, and not ignore, anything on the Living Glossary supersedes all that other stuff. So, not full clarifications, but let's look at the third one I brought up. Here's the third one, the last one I ended on with the weapon special. Is a weapon specialist, or does mastery make a weapon a mastery that grants specialization to everyone in the settlement? Do they all become specialists? That's what made it to Living Glossary, and then it just said yes. This is the question that was asked of Taste. The Armored Fist fighting art requires Fist and Tooth proficiency to work. If a Fist and Tooth master has a fighting art and decides to switch to another weapon proficiency, will Armored Fist continue to work? right? Now this is where the weapon proficiency in this answer was clarified. So yes, weapon masters and specialists are proficient in the weapon types they master and specialize in. This also made it to the glossary under a second question. This question was also there. Proficiency is blanked when you switch weapon types unless a weapon master is passively giving all survivors in the settlement a specialization. That's where the specialization, that's where that other question that was broken off of this. Survivors with the specialization mastery of a weapon are considered proficient with that weapon. As per the core rules, survivors are specialists in the weapon so long as either one, this is where the yes thing would be very helpful that this was expanded upon. So as per the core rules, survivors are specialists in a weapon so long as one, the specialization mastery milestone of that weapon proficiency is filled on their record sheet, or two, a weapon master innovation is granting them the specialization. So there's two ways of becoming a specialist. Let's go down. There's more of this. Sample scenario 1. A fist and tooth specialist loses specialization by switching to another weapon proficiency. They can no longer benefit from the effects of armor fist. What that clarification means is if you didn't reach mastery, but you became a specialist and then you switched, you're no longer a specialist, right? Because your weapon proficiency was blanked. However, if you made it to mastery, then switch, and your weapon proficiency is blank, for some reason you're still a master and you're still proficient in fist and tooth, because that mastery innovation is granting you the specialization, and then you become a specialist and now you're proficient again. So it's very convoluted. It should be really been clarified. It's clarified here, but unless it makes it to the living glossary, I don't know. Scenario 2, a survivor reaches fist and tooth mastery, granting fist and tooth specialization to all the survivors in the settlement so long as the innovation exists. All survivors can benefit from the effects of armor fist. Weapon mastery innovations grant specialization to all survivors in the settlement. In addition to their other weapon proficiencies, survivors with specializations in weapons are the specialists of that weapon. See, so that's why I was saying that the living glossary is 100% correct. It's what Taste said. It's just very simplified down to just yes. And some of these extra clarifications would be very helpful to knowing like full and well how the system works. So now let's look at another part of this weapon, because this weapon specialization thing, because I've asked it twice. Here is a follow-up that I had with Tastemaker. You can see him here, Dark Tastemaker. So a Sword Master, this is me asking in the Discord directly, so a Sword Master can switch types and still activate the Black Sword. Because they're a Master, they're still going to be considered a Master because the innovation exists in the settlement. Masters and specialists are Masters and Specialists. And a Survivor in Vagabond armor could not, as they are not considered to have 8 ranks and be a Master, right? So a person in Vagabond armor, they are not considered a Master. They just get the benefits of whatever. And then I quoted the rulebook here, and the rulebook says if a new survivor wants to gain the benefits of mastery that already has an innovation, they must gain weapon proficiency 8 levels, right? So just because the mastery is granting you specialization, you're not really considered to have weapon 8 proficiency levels. And he says, or they, Dark Tastemaker would say that is correct, right? So it's stuff like this that would be very helpful to have all this extra clarification on. So final example here, and this is the final thing I want to say about this with the living glossary and all these rules and everything. When you go to the FAQ and you see I search here for Dia because I'm searching for diabolical, and I pulled this one up. How does the monster controller perform the Screaming Antelope's diabolical? That's on here. It's a very common question. Very, very common question. It's not a very easy card to just grasp right away unless you've played a whole bunch. Usually, when a monster full moves towards a target, they stop when they become adjacent to them. This card, however, is intended to move the antelope through the target and trample them in the process. Great. This could have been asked prior to 1.5, because 1.5 made the clarification to make it say to move completely through, right? Before that card was there, it didn't say move completely through. However, because, and this is just something that, because I spend so much time in the rules, because I love spending time with the community, because I always answer questions and comments on all of YouTube, everyone's always asking me questions and rules, or why did you do this? Why does it work that way? How did you know it worked that way? Why are you playing like this? So it's neat that you know this. And then when I go to rules, and I spend so much time in rules and asking people, answering questions, that is not what this question wanted to have answered, right? The question specifically was asking something else. And I know because as I'm sure most of you also know, that this question isn't, that's not what it was asking, right? It was asking something else. How is pick target affected by flow actions? This is the question that was actually wanting, this is the answer that people wanted when they ask about diabolical. It's right here. You wouldn't know that unless I searched for target, like pick target, but this is the answer that the diabolical question actually wanted. How is pick target affected by flow actions? Performing survival actions inside the flow immediately after an AI card's pick target list will not change the target of an AI card. If an AI card targets the closest survivor and the target dashes away from the monster, they remain the target even if they are no longer the closest survivor. If an AI card targets a random survivor in range, the chosen survivor will remain the target even if they dash out of range. When a monster performs move and attack action on a survivor who is out of range, the monster full moves towards the survivor, then skips the attack and advances to the next AI card. This is what that question about Diabolical was wanting. How do I know that? Because I spend a lot of time in the community. That's the question. It's not about how do you move the antelope. It was how do you target someone in the range of Diabolical, right? Because it goes like this and it goes like that in the blue box, right? It's what they're asking about is how targeting specifically works for that. For Diabolical, if you're in that blue box, you're going to be targeted, right? And then it's going to move after you. So if you're in the blue box and then you dash up like one space to try to get out and you want the antelope to run by you like that, it's not going to do that. It already targeted you when you were in, this explains it, right? Right here, the whole thing. Performing survival action set of flow immediately after AI picks target will not change the target of the AI card, right? So if you were in the blue and then you dash one space up hoping it would run by you like a bullfighter, no, it's already targeted you. It's just going to move up now and then run through you. That's the question that they wanted to ask by Diabolical. So that's what's great about having an actual member of Team Death as part of the community, like Dark Tastemaker. They will be able to understand the nuance of a question. They fully grasp what's actually being asked. And then when you ask a follow-up question, they have time to respond more to it and further explain, which is what I was showing with the Discord, having all that stuff down and everything, tracking all those things, having all of the full responses from Taste is great. And hopefully, with everyone helping me out, with everyone continuing to ask questions, with everyone leaving comments on my videos, everything like that, I'll be able to further, fully understand and ask the best question in a way to get it clarified the best. And that's what I'm hoping to do. And it's so great to have Dark Tastemaker around to actually be able to have a bouncing conversation with, to make sure we get things clarified very well. And then hopefully we'll try to get that all up on the Living Glossary. So hopefully this was helpful. Now you know we're a very great, normally I wouldn't, if had this been 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that the fact was the glossary and the FAQ were not the best places to go. I would have said it's much better to just ask around and get the errata. Board Game Geek also keeps a very great errata and rules clarifications. It is a great thread on there too. But now the Living Glossary, I feel, is actually going to be very helpful in the way it answers its questions. So now you know.